Mario Sunshine is a very thoroughly analyzed game. With many speedrun glitches and secrets found, there isn't much left to cover inside of this game. Though, while many have been looking deeper into the game and its intricate systems, today we're going to take a look at the surface level things that some may say you couldn't miss. After a false trial at his presumed vacation spot, Mario now needs to clean his name with FLUDD and figure out who exactly is framing him. So after taking care of Shadow Mario and his gatekeeper Piranha, we make it into Bianco Hills. Bianco Hills is in the Delfino countryside with beautiful architecture, a massive lake, and let's just go ahead and see what you couldn't miss. The town we come across as soon as we enter Bianco Hills looks very peaceful, with many birds and flowers surrounding its exterior. This eco-friendly look is not just a look though, cause clearly majority of the electricity utilized in this town is clean energy, as seen with all the turbines. This, along with the fact that wind spirits inhabit this village, guarantees the town energy for years to come. However, the oddity we see here is that not every building is sharing power, and many buildings seem to only be connected to one turbine. This shows a deep ingrained delusion of self-preservation in the inhabitants of this village, causing many to hoard their massive turbines to themselves. Clearly, due to the randomness of the ocean wind direction and which turbines the wind spirits keep spinning, it would be much more beneficial for them to all be connected in the case that the hills block a certain ocean wind. But with the current setup, many Piantas end up spending some nights without AC in Delfino's blazing temperatures due to this voltage division. The secret levels all have a very similar vibe and feel, but each tells us a story of its own. Bianco Hills having 2 secret levels actually tells us of Shadow Mario's inner struggle with his new life of villainy. This can be seen in the cave secret, where clearly he believes that stopping Mario will be a straight and linear path, which explains why the level itself is just in a straight line. However, his belief clearly changes in the Dirty Lake secret, where instead of having simple rotating platforms, they start flipping and rolling in a struggle against Mario. This struggle is personified onto Shadow Mario, realizing that opposing Mario will be a struggle, and not as simple as he originally thought. The unique boss we will fight twice in Bianco Hills is PD Piranha. Our first encounter occurs after falling through a windmill, and the second will be after we wake him for causing destruction to the Bianco Hills village. PD Piranha is very interesting, due to him being one of the few piranha plants that develop petals. If you didn't know, each of the petals a piranha plant has actually denotes an accomplishment in their life. PD Piranha actually has 12 petals, each for a deed he has done. The first 3 he got were when he was a normal piranha plant. This included biting Mario one time, claiming his first pipe, and growing his legs. The rest were after, and due to his enhanced ego from the first few petals, he started considering even the most minuscule things a deed. Some of the most odd creatures in Bianco Hills are found near where we awoke PD. We stumble upon these little pig-like creatures called poinks. These poinks are very odd, latching onto the nozzle of FLUDD anytime the spray nozzle is attached. This usually leads to them being exploded by being filled to overcapacity with water by Mario. But looking closer, I believe something else is occurring. Clearly, these creatures would not have the desire to fill up with water just to die, and by what happens when we release them, it seems to be their main mode of transportation. While it looks like they explode, when they make contact with a surface, they actually just release the remaining water in their bodies all at once, rocketing faster than the eye can see into the sky. This returns them to the Point Cloud capital, where they discuss politics before dropping back down onto Isle Delfino to do Point things. To further the oddities of Bianco Hills' ecosystem, they also have skeeters, which oddly enough have the most unique defense mechanism imaginable. The skeeters, when sprayed with water, start to shake, and if jumped on during this state, send Mario flying into the sky. I would debate on the reasoning for them evolving to have this trait, but clearly this was a simple typo in the code. This is due to the skeeter's natural desire to stay above water, thus causing them to try to stay buoyant at any time water is hitting any part of their body other than their feet. This shaking was supposed to affect their buoyancy stat, but the devs misspelled buoyancy to bouncy, causing this oddity to occur. After reclaiming all of Bianco Hill's shine sprites, we are led to kill another proto-piranha, which coincidentally gives us passage to Rico Harbor. Rico Harbor is the heart of Isle Delfino's economy, allowing for the import and export of many goods required to keep Delfino's resort atmosphere alive. With this being such an important area in the islanders' day-to-day life, let's see what you couldn't miss. Since the unique boss of this level is so eager to greet us right as we enter the harbor, let's discuss Gooper Blooper first. Gooper Blooper is a blooper who goopered all over the harbor, not once, but twice. As we all know, this cannot stand. However, unlike many other bosses in this game, Gooper Blooper seems to be the most innocent of them all. Since he was the first Shine, we know he was impatient to meet us, and during the fight, other than trying to tag us with his tentacles, he never attempts to harm. The only time he does is if we try to remove the goop on his face, which, without his consent, obviously would cause anyone to lash out. Though the only thing wrong with this theory of being friendly is the fact that he goopered all over the pier. This act, even though harmful, can be written off as a childish, not thought through act to get attention due to being lonely. Speaking of bloopers, Rico Harbor is also home to the blooper surfing safari. While calling it a safari is false advertisement due to the only animals observed being bloopers, the blooper surfing safari is more like the blooper Grand Prix, with Mario choosing between 3 bloopers all with varying stats. The oddity with this event, however, is its location. To enter the race, we must enter the sewer system of Rico Harbor. This is extremely odd when considering the harbor itself is more than 70% water, making it almost perfect to host a blooper race in the harbor itself. These discrepancies lead many to believe that the blooper races are done out of sight of the authorities due to the colored bloopers being a protected species under Delfino law. While it's good Mario ends up winning the race and taking the shines away from these heinous criminals, if evidence ever gets revealed of Mario participating in these crimes, he's cooked. One of the most memorable shines in Rico Harbor is the Cage Shine Sprite, requiring Mario to do a bunch of acrobatics around the machinery frames in Rico Harbor, all while avoiding wind spirits and bloopers. And no matter how much we all want more blooper insights, the real question is, what exactly is the cage the Shine Sprite is in? While it does have a chain link exterior, and coincidentally a blooper resides in it during other episodes, many doubt its validity as a cage. Judging by the shape, it looks more like an inverse funnel, with a narrow top that slowly expands as we approach the bottom. While this may seem far-fetched, if we think back to the entrance to Sirena Beach, we know Delfino is home to massive varieties of their common fruit. These enlarged fruit size is almost a perfect match for the top of our cage in Rico Harbor. This must mean this cage is actually the skeleton of a large fruit blender that is a work in progress in Rico Harbor. This explains why the sides of the cage are in the process of being reinforced to hold in all the fruit, and also why there's a flip gate at the bottom to let the fruit juice out after the blender is utilized. The Secret of Rico Tower is the only secret stage in Rico Harbor, and as we saw in Bianco Hills, also gives us insight into Shadow Mario's psyche. The entirety of the secret level is made out of toy-like wooden blocks, all rotating and spinning. The blocks clearly represent looking back into one's childhood, while them rotating is a clear indicator that their childhood was turbulent. This must mean that while Shadow Mario was creating the secret, he mentally was reliving whatever childhood troubles led him down this path of villainy. One of the most normal variety enemies in Rico Harbor are the Cheep Cheeps. These creatures simply jump out of water over and over again in place, hoping that a seagull will jump in its mouth for sustenance. While this is a very ineffective way to gather food, Cheep Cheeps in Rico Harbor actually have another reason they jump so often. This is due to every Cheep Cheep's extremely absorbent skin. If the Cheep Cheeps stay in water for too long, all of that water absorbs into their skin and causes extreme bloating. This is not only bad for the Cheep Cheep's ability to catch seagulls, but also causes a weird symbiotic relationship to form. As we all know, the blue pad's whole purpose for living is to turn into a pad for Mario to jump off of. A way they do this is from draining Cheep Cheep's bloating, giving them more mass so they can fulfill their purpose in the world, while also saving Cheep Cheeps from a bloated fate. Rico Harbor is now safe from getting goopered by Blooper, but Peach is now in danger from getting kidnapped by Shadow Mario. So in hopes of saving her, we need to head to Pinna Park. Pinna Park is a safe and fun amusement park with no hazards whatsoever. So in this OSHA certified environment, let's look at what you couldn't miss. In pursuit of Shadow Mario, we rush to Pinna Park to chase after him. After we finally catch up to him, it turns out we were lured into a trap. If it weren't obvious by the shell submarine we saw him speed off in, this Bowser mech confirms that Shadow Mario is working with Bowser. In addition, after defeating the mech, we finally learn of Shadow Mario's true identity, Bowser Jr. While this is interesting, the more interesting facet is how Bowser Jr. at such a young age learned the engineering know-how to create Mecha Bowser. Thinking of the knowledge required, Bowser Jr. must have the knowledge of someone who has a PhD or higher, meaning instead of disrespecting him, we should all refer to him with his doctor prefix in mind. The Pinna Park beach is home to many inhabitants, but one can only be described as an invader. The Monty mole that took over the cannon is an extremely violent mole, constantly firing explosive rounds and bombs at Mario without stopping. While we all know Mario stops Monty, the sad circumstance that comes from the Pianta that was working on the cannon as Monty stole it is shocking. As we know, before we were able to venture into Pinna Park, a Pianta was working on the cannon back in Delfino Isle, day in and day out to secure us passage to the park. Luckily for the job on Pinna Park Beach, another Pianta mechanic took every other day, allowing his workload to be more manageable. But unfortunately, our original Plaza Pianta on his working day encountered Monty. Our friend valiantly fought to defend the cannon against Monty Mole, but sadly perished at Monty's claws. This is the first confirmed death we see in Mario Sunshine. Back into the park, we needed to discuss the pirate ship ride and many people's obvious concerns of its safety. The ship seems to have no safe qualities about them, being massive swinging ships with no seats nor handrails, and a very slick deck. While Mario personally is safe on this ride due to flood, how do normal everyday tourists survive? The truth is, while this park is approved by OSHA, the specific branch of OSHA that certified it only did so for Piantas and Nokis. This explains how they expect the ship ride to be safe, with Piantas being naturally buoyant and impact resistant in the cases where they are flung into the water or onto the concrete, and the Nokis having shells to protect themselves from impacts and their inherent water breathing ability in case they fall into the water. While they still offer inflatable hamster balls for tourists, this ride is still not for the faint of heart. The sunflowers are a beautiful entourage to welcome new visitors to the park. However, in episode 4, they come under attack by Snooza Koopas. These creatures evolved with Yoshi camouflage in an attempt to not be bothered, while another one of their biological mechanisms wreaks havoc onto the sunflowers around them. Snooza Koopas are similar to certain breeds of catfish, and can bury themselves in the ground to survive for many months without seeing the sun. They do this by slowing their metabolism and utilizing cutaneous respiration, which is essentially breathing through their skin. The downside to this, however, is they need their skin to constantly stay moist. This fact drained all the moisture from the sunflowers and is the reason Mario is led to exterminate them, but only if the Snooza Koopas chose a different place to hibernate, this altercation could have been avoided. Bonus knowledge for this area: since the water for both the sunflowers and the Snooza Koopas were keeping them hydrated and healthy, this means the oceans in Mario Sunshine are freshwater. The runaway Ferris wheel is a unique level that many decide to skip, utilizing a well-timed jump from the wall right below it. Many do this due to the backside for some being a little tedious and boring. But did you know this is also canonically true? So far, we have come across 2 enemy types who have specifically chosen to sleep in or near Pinna Park: the Snooze Koopas and the King Electro Koopa. The Snooze Koopas must have entered the park at first to enjoy its festivities, then after realizing none of the rides were made for them, caused them to hibernate on the beach instead. The Electro Koopas, however, love to climb, and many enjoy climbing around the park. All of them but one, which is the King Electro Koopa. This Electro Koopa, being the king, clearly knows what's what when it comes to climbing obstacles. So much so that after he climbed the back of the Ferris wheel, he was so bored he fell asleep due to this boredom, thus making it canon that the park overall for Koopa specifically is extremely boring. The secret levels, as before, are still conveying Shadow Mario, now Bowser Jr.'s thoughts as his journey of villainy is unfolding. The first of the secret levels is the Beach Cannon secret, with its aesthetic of blocks fading away around Mario, showing how Bowser Jr. feels his advantages against Mario are slowly fading away, making him lose his footing in his villainy, while also foreshadowing his acquisition of Yoshi with the Yoshi-themed blocks. This Yoshi theme continues in the Yoshi Go Round secret, where all of the different colored Yoshi eggs shows Bowser Jr.'s desire to have a Yoshi of his own. Then right after, a massive jumble of random blocks, demonstrating his confusion on why Mario had to take away his Yoshi when he had such a strong desire to ride one of his own. With Pinna Park and its Koopa infestations staved off, we need to do something about the Proto-Piranha covering the lighthouse. Other than causing thousands in damages due to ships crashing, the Proto-Piranha also is guarding Gelato Beach. Gelato Beach is known for its sandbird and sand watermelon, but let's go ahead and see what you couldn't miss. Right as we enter Gelato Beach, we make contact with the Cataquacs. The naming scheme for these ducks is pretty obvious, which makes it a perfect fit for the first topic of this area. The cat in their name standing for their tendency to walk around like house cats, and a quack standing for how they attack Mario. Soon after we greet the Cataquacks, Dr. Bowser Jr. baits us into yet another secret level with his 6th sandcastle. The Dunebud Sandcastle secret shows us how Bowser Jr. is getting more comfortable with his villainy. While he still is utilizing platforms that crumble under Mario, the fact he created this place in a sandcastle and also made a sandcastle on the level itself shows that he feels his villainy is starting to have form and shape, though he still has his doubts, which explains the crumbling sand. The 3 mirrors of Gelato Beach keep the tradition of raising a sandbird alive. In a later episode, however, this tradition comes under attack by the Plungellos. These creatures are close relatives to the Cataquacks, and due to them having a similar upbringing, also gives us insight that their name must have an obvious meaning. Clearly the plun in the name is a play on the word plum, referencing the leaf stem on their head, causing them to look like a fruit, and jello referencing the vibrant colors of the Plungello, looking similar to the food jello. The main boss of Gelato Beach coincidentally was in a symbiotic relationship with the Plungellos, and now that we have quacked as friends, he's going to quack us. The Wiggler is an extremely aggressive boss to face. He constantly rushes us down with little to no stopping unless we utilize the Dune Buds. While the morality of us viewing the Wiggler as evil due to him clearly wanting to avenge his friends is questionable, the true oddity we should focus on is the random nature of the Wiggler's weak spot. Every time we flip the Wiggler over, one segment will always be weak to Mario's ground pound. While the way this segment is chosen is unclear due to what we know, there's one assumption that makes the most sense. Due to the extreme emotional trauma we cause the Wiggler, we have weirdly stumbled upon the Wiggler's anatomical trait of stress causing their hearts to constantly shift position, explaining why his weak spot is always shifting. After fixing the incubation mechanism and taking care of the Wiggler, we find the egg hatched, allowing us to make our way into the Sandbird's domain. This area is a simple skybox with many pillars as far as the eye can see. The almost mythological vibe felt from our guide Sandbird emphasizes how sacred this place we stumbled upon is. Though with so many pillars, what does each one represent? Due to the Sandbird being only one of many that has hatched over the years, this leads me to believe that each one of these pillars represents one of the Sandbirds of years past. This also explains why the Sandbird circles one pillar, signifying his ownership of it. After the completion of every main event in Gelato Beach, we get to enjoy some of the side events offered at Gelato, first of which is racing with Il Piantissimo. While everyone knows he is the postman from Zelda's brother, we don't know why he hides his identity, disguising himself as a Pianta. The only logical explanation is he must have committed some crime or was framed just like Mario was in the past. The other side event is the Watermelon Festival, which is an annual festival held at Gelato Beach. The oddity seen here is that the watermelons that grow here are extremely resilient and can grow on sand and even stone pavement. It's almost as if they can grow without roots at all. The biology of this species of watermelon seems to disobey every law of how fruit should exist, and yet they still persist and carry on. This fruit species in its encompassing episode is not meant to be a lesson in biology, but clearly more is a lesson in the shape of metaphors. The developers clearly desired the player to look at the illogical nature of this watermelon and look for truth within the lies, with the truth being only assumptions cast by shadows of our former selves before the watermelon, leading to the only outcome being the watermelon melding who we are and how we perceive ourselves going into the present day. Gelato Beach unfortunately did not have any gelato, but Noki Bay definitely has Nokis. Noki Bay, while mostly water, definitely isn't bloated, and today, let's see what you couldn't miss. As soon as we enter Noki Bay, we witness quite a vulgar sight. The waterfall of Noki Bay is getting corked. The corking we are witnessing clearly is the reason for the season of poison in the bay, and knowing this, we venture to the top to stop this corking, leading us to none other than Monty Mole himself. As we learned in Pinna Park, Monty is a Pianta murderer, and now we see he is a corker as well. This sad road Monty has been going down has spiraled so far that he won't only stoop to murder, but also stooping to corking. Even if we stop Monty, knowing that he is on this downward spiral means his next attempt at villainy will be even worse. The Tricky Ruins are a massive landmark for Delfino Isle, with thousands of years of history and technology locked within their walls. With these being such important cultural sites for the Delfino and especially the Noki people, they are highly regarded and protected at all costs. This is why when goop started to be strewn across them, Mario was called in to stop this travesty. Once we reach the top, we sadly realize Gooper Blooper is behind all of the gooping. While originally his vandalism was innocent and juvenile, this clearly is a targeted attack towards Noki culture. This must mean that bloopers and Nokis have had a generational rivalry for many years, originating when the bloopers helped create these ruins many years ago, and never received any thanks or help from the Nokis after. This grudge would ultimately build and culminate in this attempt to erase the Nokis' ancestry due to their unthankful malpractice. Turns out that Monty's corking wasn't the actual reason for the poison season. In reality, there's something going on in the depths of the bay, but in preparation for our deep sea dive, the Noki Elder shoves us into a bottle. While this would be terrifying for majority of characters in media, luckily this is not that type of bottle. Mario is simply sent here to collect red coins while getting his bearings with a diving helm. Though, the real implication with the lore here is that what was the Noki Elder trying to hide inside of this bottle? The ability he has to shrink any object into the bottle allowed him to put some ruins at the bottom with very unique architecture. Why he doesn't want these ruins and the book they contain to be studied by architects is unknown, but maybe some secrets are best forgotten. Technically, the main boss of Noki Bay is Eelymouth. I say technically because homie really didn't have a reason, or did he mean to poison this season? This was just a simple case of gross negligence of hygiene, leaving Eelymouth as a toxic biohazard. While yes, it is true Eelymouth is to blame for the sorry state of the bay, it's more apt to blame his sad upbringing. Eelymouth at a young age was severely neglected by his parents, leading to him not learning many of the basic tasks that you are supposed to engage in for hygiene. We come across Il Piantissimo once more inside of Noki Bay. Piantissimo has still been managing to avoid his warrants, enjoying and living his life behind his false persona. However, now that we have seen him twice in different regions, his criminal contacts are more realized. Due to his ability to travel around Delfino Isle without the need for an ID, we now know Piantissimo is well connected in the Delfino underworld, more specifically the smuggling ring allowing him to traverse the island's many locations without getting caught. The shell secret once again helps us dive into the ego of Bowser Jr. The design of this secret is the most organized and devious one yet. By the complexity of this level compared to the others, I think we can finally say that Bowser Jr. has fulfilled his desire to be confident in himself. He now considers himself an equal to Mario, and with the amazing design of this level, he very well might be. While wandering around Noki Bay, you will stumble across little crevices that seem to be the type of place a blue coin would be ripe and ready to be acquired. This is until you get scared and attacked by a vicious Cheep Cheep. Not to be confused by the fish Cheep Cheep, but these are more violent and definitely more scary. With the depth of insanity needed to create such a contraption as the Cheep Cheep, I sincerely hope we never run into the dark and twisted creator of this mind-altering encounter. The last thing to discuss in Noki Bay are the sentient coins seen in the depths of the bay. While we also see sentient coins in the reef of Gelato Beach, we never saw these swimming as one massive organism as we see in this crevasse. The way these coinfish work are actually no different from normal fish, so no more explanation is required. Noki Bay has been saved from Eelymouth and the Corker, and with us wanting a more relaxing change of pace, we make our way to Sirena Beach. This is the home of Hotel Delfino and definitely has some things that you couldn't miss. While Mario may have been hoping to find more relaxing and menial tasks at a hotel, what he finds is quite the opposite. The hotel and the beach itself is under attack by Phantom Manta. While the infinitely thin manta and its inexplicable ability to split up into tiny pieces is interesting, the real question is, why does shooting water onto the manta cause harm, considering it just emerged from the ocean? The only explanation is that Flood, when shooting water, actually vibrates the water at an extremely high frequency before firing. This explains why it's so easy for us to clean off goop we see throughout the game, and why our water is able to rip through Phantom Manta like paper. The mysterious Hotel Delfino episode really lives up to its name. This is due to the shine being locked inside of the hotel's pool with no clear way inside without our swimwear. While this makes sense for a pool setting, the oddity comes when you realize for the shine sprite to enter the pool, they also needed swimwear as well. Meaning the shine sprites are not only the guardians of Delfino, but also very well dressed individuals. Episode 4 introduces us to the casino lounge inside of Hotel Delfino. This casino from our point of view looks very generous, allowing Mario to spin infinitely for free on the big slots until he hits 777. This generosity for Mario, however, is unfortunately not shown to the other guests. They intentionally allow Mario to win big in hopes that those who see Mario win will get it twisted and gamble all their money thinking it's as easy as Mario makes it, thus causing immense gains for the hotel but immense losses for anyone else. The two secrets of Sirena Beach are starting to show Bowser Jr.'s rising doubts about him being able to defeat Mario. The hotel lobby secret is mostly linear, with one portion that splits off into two paths. While quickly becomes linear again, the fact one path is lower than the other suggests Bowser Jr. believes that he has two paths, one to victory and one to failure, thus requiring him to still his resolve going into the casino secret. While he still utilizes a linear path here, he's clearly deciding to fight harder for victory, making almost every single platform moving, showing his immense resolve to stay on that high path we saw prior. As we know from prior episodes, the hotel and casino were haunted, though episode 5 reveals it's haunted by none other than King Boo himself. However, oddly enough, he's not looking as he was during the events of Luigi's Mansion, with an obviously enlarged tongue and missing the jewel in his crown. While there might be a lore explanation on why King Boo was changed in this manner, the real reason was the developers were too afraid of the King Boo design they made for Luigi's Mansion, and to prevent them having to come into work every day to face a nightmare, they toned it down for the sake of their mental health. Episode 6 returns us to the outside of Sirena Beach, requiring us to clean up a bunch of goop off the front of the hotel. The oddity here is that the goop is the same goop Phantom Manta would spread, though compared to Phantom Manta's original trail, this one is much larger. And since no one saw the person responsible, this has to mean there's an even larger manta that made its way over Sirena Beach that thankfully was just using Sirena Beach as a stepping stone to wherever they were going next. With a little bit of talking to the staff, we learn of the auto-locking doors in the hotel. This is a little bit of an annoyance for Mario in episode 2 and 8, that was a little more than an annoyance a few years before Mario showed up. Back then, all the locking systems in the hotel malfunctioned and locked every guest in their rooms. This caused all the guests to be locked in their rooms for a month straight, but luckily, due to all the guests being Piantas during this time, their physiology allowed them to survive in these conditions for the duration, leading to no casualties. However, the following lawsuit left the hotel on the verge of bankruptcy, which is why the casino was originally built, to save the hotel from running out of business. With all levels saved but one, there's only one thing left to do. Climb the Shine Gate and hop into Pianta Village. With its chain chomps and mesh housing, let's see what you couldn't miss in Pianta Village. When we reach the village, we are greeted by absolute chaos. All around the village are chain chomplets with fevers running rampant. While it's odd that their biology causes them to heat to extremely dangerous temperatures when experiencing a fever, the real oddity is their tails. For some reason, their tails act as though you are pulling back a toy car and catapult the chomplets forward. However, as opposed to a toy car, the chomplets lock themselves in place as they charge up. This gives us a hint towards the chomplets' locomotion physiology. While it seems they hop around with their visible body parts, they actually do so with extremely tiny legs on the bottom of their bodies. These legs can be used to explain why the chomplets get locked in place during the tail pulling process. When the chomplet's tail is pulled, their bodies have an innate response to initiate a sprinter stance. This stance not only keeps them in place, but also allows them to store immense kinetic energy, thus explaining the propulsion we see after release. Why this trait was gained due to evolution is unknown, but considering how niche this trait is, we may never know. Episode 2 compared to 1 is not absolute chaos. This is just another simple race against Il Piantissimo. With us beating Piantissimo twice, this being our third and final race with him, he definitely wouldn't want to lose again. And while it's never stated, odds are Pianta Village is where Piantissimo calls home, meaning he has a home turf advantage. Though, how do we know this? Based on his criminal background, firstly, Piantissimo is loved by the inhabitants of the village, meaning they would probably cover for him in the event he was caught. Secondly, considering the specifications a criminal like Il Piantissimo would want, the village is a perfect fit, with a secluded location, access to an underground passageway, and a canyon to dispose evidence. All his bases are covered. And lastly, the hot spring to cool off after a race fits perfectly for a lavish man such as Il Piantissimo. The Goopy Inferno puts Pianta Village into absolute chaos, and also is the only stage where Bowser Jr. decides to swipe FLUDD right as the level starts. It's pretty obvious as to why the level does this, with the goal being extremely easy and trivial if FLUDD is utilized. However, for Bowser Jr. to ambush us outside of his pocket dimensions he uses for his secret levels would definitely require a time-intensive stakeout. This implies that Bowser Jr. has spent every second of his time, other than his appearances in episode 7's, secrets, and in cutscenes, waiting here just in case Mario shows up. It's weird he would spend this much time for a level that can be cheesed so easily, but who knows how his genius mind works. Chain Chomp's bath starts off peaceful, but quickly evolves into absolute chaos. While this is clearly due to Mario's lack of dog walking experience, what we truly want to dive into here is the hot spring we dumped the Chain Chomp into. Oddly enough, even though this hot spring isn't meant for the Chain Chomp, somehow the Chomp perfectly fits into the spring. While this can be written off as a coincidence, this actually tells us the origin of the hot spring. Many years ago, a Chain Chomp as hot as the sun landed at this exact location. This created the geothermal hotspot for this hot spring and the perfectly sized Chain Chomp indentation. The underside secret is Bowser Jr.'s last secret, and weirdly enough, he has trapped tons of Piantas inside of it this time. Though, not only are they trapped, they also have been hypnotized to toss Mario when any vocal interaction is had. This cruel treatment of the Piantas truly signifies Bowser Jr.'s full acceptance of his villainy, showing his complete lack of empathy for anyone no matter how innocent, as long as his goals of defeating Mario are accomplished. And speaking of Bowser Jr.'s empathy, we truly get to see his lack of empathy in the absolute chaos that is Piantas in need. This is the 4th time he has struck Pianta Village with a burning threat, and the 5th time overall he has messed with the Piantas in this village. Compared to every other area, none have been terrorized by Bowser Jr. more than Pianta Village. Though, why is this the case? Due to Piantas generally helping Mario during past episodes, Jr. started hating Piantas, and started seeing them as enemies. Thus, when he heard about a village named after the people he considers enemies, he decided to full send all of his most heinous acts of vandalism not only against the village itself, but its people as well. The last episode in Pianta Village is for once not absolutely chaotic, and this time is organizedly chaotic. This is due to the Fluff Festival, and inherently it's fluffs. The fluffs that fly around during this festival seemingly appear from nowhere, especially considering the fact there are no dandelion-type plants inside of the village. The origin of the fluffs has been hotly debated, and have led to 2 theories that have been accepted as equally plausible. One being the fluffs are sentient and decide to migrate annually on the festival date. The second theory, and the one I personally believe in, is the fluffs are being released by the Poinks from their cloud capital in the sky. With everywhere but Corona Mountain completed, we might as well take a look at Delfino Plaza before we leave it for good. The Plaza of Delfino is the home of the Shine Sprites, and is the capital of Isle Delfino. With this being such an important place in Delfino Isle, there are definitely some things you couldn't miss. Many of the Piantas we find in Delfino Isle are avid shoppers, and have brought their shopping baskets to the plaza to pick up their fruit orders. Though, due to the size of their baskets, they've gotten quite tired of carrying them and want Mario to pick up their orders for them. While this is what many think at first, as Mario starts to deliver the fruits, we find something fascinating. Each time Mario deposits a fruit into the baskets, it seems as though the basket would move and chew the fruit, leading many to believe that Piantas keep these sentient baskets as pets. Why this isn't just flat out told to Mario is odd, but it must mean that this is a common practice in the Isle, so much so that odds are it's a common area of culture shock for many tourists. One of the most common ways to traverse Delfino Plaza is with a water slide. This function, however, doesn't make much sense, especially considering how much friction concrete generates. The only explanation to this is that water in Delfino Isle, when coating any object, causes a negative coefficient of friction, mu, to develop onto the surface until a certain point. This coefficient slowly accelerates Mario or any other object sliding on it until it reaches a maximum velocity, and then the friction turns to 0 instead of negative, causing Mario to slide at a constant velocity infinitely until another force begins to act on him, stopping the motion. The box-breaking minigame is one of the most blood-pumping parts of Mario Sunshine, leaving many with faint hearts to skip out on it. However, with how blood-pumping this is, many skip over why these boxes need to be disposed of in the first place. It's a little odd that this Pianta is making a game out of crates that are standard storage quality. Clearly the Pianta could make bank selling these crates to the many businesses at the plaza, but the Pianta decides against it for whatever reason. While you may be thinking this Pianta acquired these crates illegally, making them unsellable, what really transpired was a sad twist of fate. This Pianta at a young age committed serial fraud. While this was done when they were in their rebellious teenage years, the punishment of never being able to run a business again still persists. This was never a problem till recently when he randomly inherited his grandfather twice removed's inheritance, which was these boxes, explaining perfectly why he chooses to spread joy with this minigame instead of selling the boxes. Delfino Plaza has 5 separate secret levels that are very different to the ones we see in every other area. While we attribute every other secret to Bowser Jr., these clearly are made by the plaza itself and tell of its history. While technically these probably have no order, I will quickly go in the order that forms the most cohesive timeline. The slide secret is an homage to the slippery slope that was the establishment of Pianta society in Delfino. Secondly, the pachinko game is the gambling boom that happened soon after the original inception of Delfino Plaza, with its difficulty symbolizing the struggles it brought to Delfino. Thirdly, the lily pad poison river is a metaphor to the economical collapse of Delfino soon after the gambling boom turned into a crisis requiring many government reforms and regulation to get the economy back onto healthy levels. Fourthly is close to current-day Delfino with the turbo nozzle level, showing how the increase of focus on tourism has caused Delfino to grow in economical health and how Delfino society has been prospering. With lastly the red coin field, which is clearly the present day, giving the feeling as though you are lost in a forest due to the ongoing conflict with Bowser Jr.'s vandalism. The boathouse is the most odd business in Delfino, containing Tanuki selling the player shine sprites at the small fee of 10 blue coins. Tanuki are extremely rare and elusive in Isle Delfino, with only one other being found in Noki Bay. However, this elusivity I feel is an omen for what types of business these Tanuki are in. Surely the selling of shine sprites would be outlawed in Delfino, considering they are the guardians of it. So this begs the question of how a black market business like this would be able to run in broad daylight in the capital Delfino. What we seem to have on our hands is the Tanuki are the most powerful mob bosses of the Delfino underground, so much so that they have enough money to bribe the Delfino government to run an illegal business so flamboyantly. While the shine sprites may be their main hustle, it's fitting criminals like these would work out of a boathouse, allowing them to smuggle people, shine sprites, and goods whenever they please. And lastly, the Pianta who grants the player sunglasses at 30 shines and sunglasses and a shirt at 120 shines is a little odd. For some reason, he has a natural intuition for the amount of shine sprites you've obtained even when no such counter is available to the Piantas Delfino. This leads me to believe this fellow is actually a physical manifestation of the shine sprites, appearing only to Mario to reward his heroism to the sprites with small tokens of appreciation. Not only does his yellow color indicate this, considering the Piantas always buy their lonesome and never is mentioned by other Piantas furthers this theory. With every episode in Delfino Isle completed, the only thing left to do is to stop Bowser Jr. Lil Homie caused a natural disaster in Delfino Plaza due to his embarrassing defeat in every level. So to save the Piantas from this flood, let's see what you couldn't miss in Corona Mountain. Before we actually head into Corona Mountain, let's discuss exactly how Bowser Jr. caused such a massive flood in Delfino Plaza. The amount of force needed to move all this water would be immense, and with the investment being so big, I doubt Bowser Jr. would have caused this flood only to cause Mario to enter Corona. This flood could have been him calling in a favor to the big Phanta Manta, meaning it required no effort, though the more likely option is he had a reason to invest time and money into causing this flood other than just Mario's movement into Corona. What Bowser Jr. must have plotted involves his contacts with major stockbrokers on the mainland of the Mushroom Kingdom. Before the flood, he told them to invest in competing resorts all across the Mario globe, meaning the flood not only caused Mario to enter Corona Mountain, but also generated him and his colleagues massive piles of cash for years to come. Now that we are in Corona Mountain, the first thing we're required to do is traverse two traps of similar design. One is a spike trap and the other is a flame trap. With these traps being so similar, it seems as though Bowser Jr.'s funding is running thin. We're using chassis for multiple traps unlike any we have seen before. Though, considering this is their main base of operations, I believe these traps are actually a glimpse into Bowser Jr.'s past. These must have been traps Bowser and Bowser Jr. built together at a young age to introduce him into villainy. This explains their simplicity, and due to them being at their HQ, they are probably here for sentimentality reasons to remind Bowser of Jr.'s younger years when he relied on Baby's first trap assembly sets. As soon as we were attempting to disprove the point of Bowser Jr. running low on funds, the next section is clearly just a clay boat. Is what we would comment on if not for the miraculous fact it's able to survive in lava. Furthermore, with the lava acting as though it's water, the viscosity must be getting lowered by extreme heat. The fact Mario is insulated from this extreme temperature is a testament to the quality of this boat's insulation, though with the material of this boat being this quality, the price clearly was outrageous, which explains why there was no room left in the budget for obstacles other than naturally occurring stalagmites. The final section of Corona Mountain before the boss fight is a cloud jumping section. This section, while there's nothing to glean from it lore-wise, actually holds a very interesting fact. The gameplay of jumping up and up was actually the inspiration for a whole game of its own, that game being Doodle Jump, the OG phone game. The final boss of Mario Sunshine is not just Bowser or just Bowser Jr., it's both of them at once. Though even with the entire Koopa Royal line before us, this boss fight is probably the easiest boss fight we see in any Mario game, only requiring 5 ground pounds on the concrete hot tub to finish, and all while minimal projectiles fly at us, usually avoidable with the rocket nozzle. While from a gameplay standpoint this is quite disappointing for many, the reasoning behind this choice actually makes sense given our perception of Junior. The entire game has been due to his many tantrums, and his inability to deal with his anger in a healthy manner. People like this usually hide their failings from important people in their lives, and we see this clearly in the boss intro cutscene. What we see is Junior acting clueless, enjoying the hot tub with Bowser, even though he knows Mario is approaching. This must mean Junior's not told Bowser of his failings in Delfino, probably feigning victory to Bowser to avoid the embarrassment of failure. Since we are not explicitly told this, it's odd seeing Bowser surprised at our entrance, but with the context, it now makes sense how the fight is so easy. While Junior prepared slightly with his artillery boat, he couldn't bring as much in case of Bowser getting suspicious thinking he failed. Though with Bowser being left in the dark, he's just an old Koopa in a tub, probably even a bit tired due to the tub, being forced into a fight he had no idea was approaching. Only if Bowser Jr. could have dropped some of his ego, this fight may have posed some of a challenge. And that is the end of what you couldn't have missed. Of what you couldn't miss in Mario Sunshine. If you enjoyed, you know what to do.